Hello. 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 Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon. And welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your sensei. And so the earlier show was in my office of elevator music. And I was talking to people around. That was like not like this show's going to be. This show's going to be kind of a focused kind of thing. And I was talking to the lucky guy. Now, this guy is a lucky guy. He's just a little younger. He's probably in his 50s. And he's died so many times, and he is a hero. He was up in the mountains of Appalachia running a church for the poor, and all he got was, the stick. And he always gave whatever money he had from the church to help the poor. And then he got involved in this. And he's always been, like me, involved in trying to help people just stay alive. And then when 9/11 happened, he joined the military and became a pastor and a minister out in the field, And he was ordered to stay, in Kabul and stay in a hotel and eat the roast beef. And but he was out in the field with the guys who really needed him. And even though he got silver stars and purple hearts and every kind of thing, he did not get any promotions. He did not get any respect. And then because he started going on about what was going on. And this is before we went into Iraq, what was going on in Afghanistan, that we didn't need to be there, that there was no real there. And we were just spending money to, put in the pockets of people like Dick Cheney. And then when they were talking about going into Iraq, he just doubled down on saying no, just say no. And so they put him there and put him right in the tip of the spear, and he got blown up twice. And each time he ended up in the hospital, they did everything they could to try and kill him, right? So this is you guys. You are the canary in the coal mine. You watch John Birmingham, and all he talks about is the color of his hair and what's so cool. And that's not what your life's about. This is what your life's about.
This is Dark Journalist with a special Part 2 interview for you with former Assistant HUD Secretary, Dylan Reed and Company partner, and the publisher of the Solari Report, Catherine Austin Fitts. Today, Catherine will go deep on the war of the digital ID, CBDC, mind control, and the UFO file. Can we find the answers in time? Let's go ask former Assistant HUD Secretary, Catherine Austin Fitts.
We have the best legislators money can buy. And then once they go to those parties where, eyes wide closed, they do really inappropriate things and get blackmailed. So not only are they paid off, they're blackmailed.
Political reality in the United States, for example, this is a very unpopular administration. The disasters in Afghanistan, Ukraine, inflation, the whole bit. And when you look at that, you see the rise of them talking about COG, and then suddenly it shows up on the Bilderberg chart.
Control of government. It was set up so nuclear war happens, everyone's dead on top.
Here's
we still have a government underground.
I don't understand. When they press that button, they're going to hurt themselves globally. In other words, you have a domestic population that
meaning when we bring on fascism,
you have international relations and networks that you have to manage. And when they press that button, it's going to be a sign of tremendous weakness.
Interesting. Yes.
And that's going to hurt them. That's going to hurt them.
And we are weak.
But
it's not just that we are a global entity.
They love to talk about it now. Pelosi loves
really?
to talk about it. Oh, yeah. There's all kinds of, there are all these articles now. They're like, hey, continuity of government might, this might happen,
Martial law.
Your new commander, General Ben Hur from Northcom would be the combatant commander of the United States.
Because JoJo is so not there. He was just placed there to be a placeholder.
That is saying, well, this is desirable. or this could happen.
So martial law in fashion,
It could be
desirable.
a Russian cyber attack.
You mean a cyber attack?
Yeah.
Attributed to the Russians.
Attributed to the Russians, exactly. In quotes.
I'm sure the Israelis would never do that.
The Israelis would never do that, right? I mean, the Russians have shown that they are incompetent. They can't kick the ass of a little teeny country.
So
we have dumped $250 billion worth of weapons into Ukraine in 4 months. What would we do for our people in America with $250 billion? Our education, our healthcare.
Not working well. And so, so you have these different efforts to assert central control, and you just keep trying to find a pathway through to complete central control. And if enough people refuse to allow complete central control,
just say no,
then it will fail. So there is a huge tension going on globally as to, even if there is central control,
a unipolar,
manage it
hidden
in the
hand,
countries and regions.
Yes.
And with what models? And so that's a competition. But then you also have a competition between the leadership in every country and the population that doesn't understand and doesn't like this.
Exactly.
Right. So
that's what's going on in China. The people aren't realizing. They're going, why do we have to be locked down all the time?
And right in the middle of it,
just for 4 people getting sick?
If immune systems have been seriously depressed in, 1 billion plus people globally.
More than that.
What's going to happen?
Because of the stress of all the wars, the people who are in the Middle East, when you go through that kind of stress, your immune system is out the window.
If you just look at what has come out about the biolabs in Ukraine, and you realize this is, 10% of the biolabs built around the world.
Fort Detrick in Maryland, JoJo's land.
Explosion in a place like Ukraine. When you have nuclear facilities and
reactors, Chernobyl is there.
Biowarfare labs and payrolls implode. Do you know what can happen?
Yeah, so people get pissed off and let the plant blow up.
Well, one of the reasons
once they realize that they've been had, that their president, the standing comedian, has pulled the wool over their eyes, and they're losing like 1,000 people a day.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk about that, and actually Ukraine was in the center of that discussion because so many of the weapons were there.
Well, it's very interesting because while Biden's screaming for gun control in the United States, we're turning over weapons to criminals in the Ukraine.
$250 billion.
We're trying to
when we did that in Afghanistan in a smaller way, the ship that got hit
here's the problem.
was one of the Stinger missiles turned into a weapon to go after one of our boats.
And centralization. What you can do is double down on more centralization and more criminal control. And the problem is that's destroying the productivity in the general economy. And a lot of people were willing to go along with the criminality as long as they got their check.
Right.
But now the China trade's over, and now, the chicken is coming home to roost, and now they're not getting their check. It's interesting. I'll never forget calling into the United States about 6 months ago, and I said, somebody was saying, everybody's furious about, the COVID lies. I said, what? Why did they all of a sudden? They said because
they were getting a check.
What's happening with the price of gas, and that's because the political equation since World War II is you give me a check and the story of why I'm good. I'm a good Christian. I have nothing to do with it. I'm not doing the war. I'm not doing the organized crime. I'm a good Christian, but I got the check, right? I'm good. So I get two things. I get a check and I get the story of I am good.
Bread and circus.
But if you give me the story of I'm good, but no check, or my check is going down in value, that's not the equation. That's not the deal.
During the pandemic, I got $200 of food stamps. Now we get $48.
And
right now, middle of the month.
This other thing has been a steady push for depopulation to have less.
Right now, middle of the month, I have $37 in my bank account. Right? Come on, throw something in PayPal. The dude awake 42. at Gmail, right? You want to talk to me? Get a hold of me. It's a dudeawake42 at Gmail. Dudeawake42 at Gmail. Dudeawake42 at Gmail. Put something in my PayMail, please. I'm $37 to last me until the first week of July, right? So, I know I'm not as meaning. I tell you stories, you're enthralled by those, right? Um, why I named this show Dreamy Dreamland was because um, that is where we are. This is what we exist in. The old crone told me that nothing is real except love's co-creation, and the only way we can traverse to that place is not through a religion or through selling ourselves to a a false god of gold. Give me the check and tell me I'm good. No, it's to serve love's co-creation, and I go on this channel as much as I do to try to assist the watching public on that. If they too, conscious intent, my conscious intent is to serve love's co-creation in every day and every way and take the piece of the earth and make it stronger. That's the only way we're getting through this. And the only way we can do that is to have a conscious awareness of where we are, what our 20 is, and what's the 360. 20 is like, hey, good buddy, what's your 20? It's like where you are that moment. Right? That's your 20. Where is your heart this moment? Where is your consciousness this moment? What do you want? Or what are you working at? What are you serving? You know, going to college, going into debt so you can get a good job. You really think so? Just look at the stock market today. It lost. And our economy is a joke. It is not what's going on. We have been in a depression basically since Jack Kennedy got whacked, because the reason he got whacked, he wanted to print, have the Treasury Department print our money backed by something of value. They blew his brains out, right? And then LBJ went straight into a war, which made tons of money for, Lockheed and Grumman and Sperry and General Dynamic and General Electric and all of the above. And look at two of our presidents, uh, Ronnie Reagan and Donnie Trump. Ronnie Reagan was a third-rate Hollywood star, and he in the 50s, he was a Democrat. He was playing with socialism, in the 30s and 40s, right? And he only played a guy in the war on the movies, right? It was much like the Duke. Duke didn't go fight, but Jimmy Stewart did. He took bombers over Germany, right? A number of other guys stepped up, but not the guys who tell the story of the unipolar power structure, right? And that is, listen, you let us do what we want, you let us be corrupt, you let us cheat, steal, and lie, and we will give you a check and tell you that you're good, right? And that's what that's what's been going on for the last 70 years. You go back to when did 1947, Roswell. Then we had right after that the National Security Act, which changed America, took away whatever we had left of the Constitution, and made us. We went straight into martial law then, right? And we have not stopped having an enemy that we had to have all in war. You know, an all in war in Afghanistan for 20 years. That JoJo just pulls out like, a high school, playboy without a raincoat. And, we could have kept 2,500 soldiers there, special forces, and the 30 A-10s and the 200 predators. And we could have kept the Taliban right where they were. And we didn't. Right?
Less people turn on them?
Daniel, I don't.
This is dark journalism.
In
This is Catherine
1998,
Austin
the
Fitz.
reason I started to talk so loudly about the missing money was I knew that if you can't balance the budget by financial means, you have to lower the retirement age. You have to lower life expectancy. It is mathematically is the only way.
And that's
to
what's going
balance
on
the
right
budget.
now.
So
And that's what's going on in China. Why do you think they're locking those people down?
Abrogate their
They're going to cut their population by a few hundred million.
And I thought it was an emergency in 1998, and I was shocked and amazed every year since then to learn that most other people didn't see it.
Yeah,
didn't feel like it was like
I've been saying this since 1972.
Smart. The government's always been corrupt, manana.
Right.
As long as I get my check and you tell me I'm good,
because,
we're good to
in
go.
Rome, you had corruption, and in the Middle Ages, you had corruption, but now they have this technology, which they didn't have, and so it makes it.
Well, they have this technology, but the other.
They're talking about electronic money. That's why
technology is going to lead to
Bitcoin and all of that. Took a dive this week, right? And they're going to go into the dust.
We also have a 20-year cycle of disrespect between the population and the leadership in the United States. The more they get away with stuff, the less they respect the general population.
You got it. We are expendable.
Right. The more their tricks work, the more the mind control works, the
more people vote for guys like Donald Trump and JoJo.
They don't respect.
They keep giving a narrative that's a lie.
And part of it is they can get away with it.
That's incredible, because we're on so many anniversaries this year. It's the 50th anniversary of Watergate in like a week. And, there's the 75th anniversary of the National Security Act, and 75th anniversary Roswell. I mean, all these different things. And they've
lied to us for all these years.
You're right. Like we've had less and less ability to come back and demand honesty and transparency from the government. And the government and those forces manipulating that government, if we want to call it the deep state or Mr. Global, whatever it happens to be, they've been emboldened by our own lack of ability to get that transparency.
So let's get back to mass hypnosis.
Yeah.
Is mass hypnosis, if you've dealt at a deep level with all the deep state tactics, from the surveillance and the mind control to the nuts and bolts of the financial carrots and sticks, to the covert operations, through the courts, through financial mechanisms, through people running you off the road and poisoning you, all of that. If you look at this fantastically complex control system, which has to be the biggest industry in the world. If you look at the money that is pouring into this industry, it is unbelievable. So here's the biggest industry in the world, and we're all pretending it's not there.
Corruption, biggest industry in the world.
And somebody comes along and says, oh, this happened because we all kind of got afraid and lost our minds together.
Took the check and let them tell them I'm good.
In a big mass event. It's like a big mass. We all went crazy together in a big mass clump.
Right,
That's why I keep saying, is Putin just reading the script, or did he flip the switch?
Yet again to blame.
Yes.
But if
Meaning
you
nuts.
look at the extraordinary
no, he's reading the script, just like JoJo, like
everybody
in power. They're not in power.
Imagine cattle spread over hundreds of millions of miles, and you've got to get them all into one pen. And it takes very different tactics.
That cattle is us.
Trucking in, some and you get them all in the corral, and you say, oh, they're there because of some spontaneous conscious event that they had. They heard a universal whistle and they went mad together. Well, think about it. It keeps everybody feeling helpless.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm not going to see the control grid and back out in time. I'm just going to sit helpless while the control grid continues to build up around me. I mean, it's very clever.
It is.
Yeah.
So in how old was I? Anyway, 65, 4, somewhere around there. When my father took me to Nevada, a test ground, and he had gotten out of the Air Force. He's wearing a suit, but he still, once you're in that scene, and you are of a certain level, you're not out. You're never out. But you can go be in private, like today. I saw some news, and I don't bet you even heard about it. One of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, one of the generals who run all our military, was found that not only was he part of a think tank, um, um, that he was also double dipping by serving as a foreign agent for Israel and for the AE, the one, not one of the cousins of Saudi Arabia, that whole ilk over there, and he's basically giving them, real security, right? And Israel's already, wired in, and anyway, so he apologized and semi-retired, and went off to work in one of the defense contractors where he will be making a seven-figure salary immediately. Right? No slap on the wrist. No, you're going to jail. No, hey, you lose all of your privileges. No, and I bet you will not hear about him again. Right? And and that's just the one guy who got found out. They're all criminals. There isn't a single righteous person. If there is, they end up dead. Like my good buddy LG, he should be dead. They tried to kill him 6 different freaking times. And he kept doing the good job, you know. So back in when I saw that, in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning, they light the thing off, and it's clear sky, not a moon is stop, just boom, and it was like, we all were facing away from the blast. We were facing the the blockhouse. That was concrete block, and my dad had like a lead raincoat over me. And when that flash went off, all the people who were in the parking lot, their images were etched on that concrete wall, and you could see the other, blasts that they had tested, because there was, one group of shadows on top of another group of shadows on top of another group of shadows on top of another group of shadows, and there I was, the littlest guy of this shadow, right? And then my dad turned me around, and this mushroom cloud is going up about 10 miles from us, and it looked like it was right there. And he said, "Put your hand," and I was wearing welder's, goggles, kind of like this, but totally black, and he said, "Put your hand up in front." And the x-rays were so strong, I could see the bones in my hand. And that's when I knew something was wrong. First of all, my father brought me, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Edwards," which meant Edwards is like everything from Albuquerque all the way to California. It's got Area 51 and all the test sites, and it's like 3 states in one. Hey, you want to go to Ed? Sure. I was the only one of us. I was the youngest, and I loved that technology. So, and he would go to these meetings. He'd stick me with a lieutenant or a master sergeant who would take me on the flight line and have me sit in a B-58 or a B-52 or a F-102 fighter. It's like every little kid's dreams. And one of those sergeants, he had the authority to run up the engines and run the aircraft around on the tarmac and bring them on the you know the takeoff strip and run them down there and then take them down. Well, he was going. I'm wearing a big helmet, right, and I hear the earphones in my head, and he gives a call sign that he's just going to taxi down the takeoff ramp. Well, he goes like he's going to take off. Now, if he lifts those tires off, the takeoff strip, he's going to be in trouble. Well, he's going faster and faster and faster, and he's getting to the point where, and the end of that airstrip is like right there, and he, kills the engines, hit the button, the parachutes fly out, and just before we get to the end, he hits the brakes on one side of the tires, and the thing like this, and skids to like that far from the end of the runway, and everyone's laughing, and And because I heard in the Sarge, don't take off, don't take off, Master Sergeant, and he came that close to getting in trouble, and then everyone laughed, and everyone's like patting on about, boy, you got real, and I was sitting in the second seat there, and so when I would see stuff like that, I knew something was up. I was 6 and 7, and then a nun murdered me. I kind of, and then I couldn't talk for 4 years, so I listened to everything that was going on around me. And I learned to listen. Even though I tell stories and I go on and on and on, I have better listening skills than my speech, right? Because, you know, um, those 4 years after the nun killed me, first grade, I couldn't speak because I couldn't speak, and I had to relearn how to speak because she crushed my esophagus and the thing right by my larynx, and so I had to relearn how to do that, right? And I used to talk like this all the time because this is about as loud as I could talk. Then I learned how to project my voice without having to have that voice box, right? So, I mean, back to our friends.
Well, what's interesting about it is it's coming from the very same people who are saying, we're blowing the lid off this thing, we're exposing where
the
government
alien agenda. Go read James Moore's Alien Agenda and all the books he
wrote. It's getting
wrote.
actually a lot of play, and it's sort of like the propped up phony opposition.
It's like the blue chicken.
That reminds me so much, because when you get around the UFO thing, all the people from the government coming forward, and they're like, that government has to give us transparency on UFOs. I'm like, you are the government. The CIA director.
So here's the funny thing. You know how long and how hard they've fought disclosure on any UFO topic.
Yes.
Let's take
50
the whole
years.
world of black weaponry and invisible weaponry.
Actually,
and
75
weaponry.
years.
It's all secret. It's all dark. Okay. But when you have inflation,
we have done over
they would rather have
$100 million trillion into the black bucket. We are out there.
So no matter how afraid they are of
and that's why
UFOs,
the next amazing, stupid, ridiculous thing is we're going to be right on the edge of nuclear war. And Vlad will launch a few, tactical,
trying to
right?
distract you from paying attention
when
to
we're
inflation.
trying to give Ukraine some really serious heavy armament, he'll take them out with nuclear.
Security suddenly became interested in UFOs, and most of the hearings were the people represented there were either CIA or DHS people, which is also a different thing. And at one point, there's a Illinois congressman who stands up, a Republican, Darren LaHood, and he says, I think that there should be penalties for people researching this subject. And the guy there who's representing the DOD, Moultrie, he says, yes, we're going to talk to Congress about that. There has to be a way to implement some penalties for people investigating UFOs.
You're kidding.
No. So you have the UFO research field, promoting this thing. Let's get disclosure from the government. And that's the government sitting there saying, we should penalize people for looking into this. And they actually spotlighted amateur interest groups.
Really?
So they might drag me out of here eventually.
No, I think what we should do is anything flying in the sky needs a sign, on it. We can use an acronym. You don't have to pretend we're not here. And on this one, you have to pretend we're not here. So we know which ones we have to pretend we're not, No, that didn't fly by, because that's a don't forget.
So I'm out here in the deep green. There's no lights. Right now there's a moon, but when there's no moon, I have a big open sky. I took a good acre out, but otherwise I'm surrounded by deep. So no lights, no nothing. You can't believe the stuff I see. I have a friend who has some good night goggles.
It's very sort of organic how things go. I mean, you've got Mr. Global saying, look, we want to centralize. And you have all these different players and industries trying to deliver to Mr. Global what he wants. So the healthcare guys are trying to deliver central control and coup through the WHO. And the pharmaceutical guys are trying to deliver it through injections, and you got the telecom guys trying to deliver it through, all the stuff they're doing with the telecommunication systems, and you got,
A
everybody's
spy
trying
device.
to deliver.
This is
Central control are the tools
central
that
control.
needs to get the central control, and they're all competing. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a lot of this is just, it's like dogs barking for pet treats, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Right. And so what you get thousands of creative ideas of people trying to deliver central control, and it's a mess. I keep hearing, I used to have this preacher who would scream it, and I loved it. I got to stop banging the table, sorry about that. He would scream, God does not bless a mess. And you listen to somebody like this guy from DOD, and you think, can you imagine trying to enforce against people? You go to Amazon, you buy, a book on UFOs. You buy Corso's book because it looks interesting. The next thing you know, you got an FBI with a subpoena at the door.
I didn't even dream about this.
I mean, that was
really remarkable.
Dr. Wilhelm Reich.
And what's fascinating,
He discovered how he was the Nikola Tesla. He was the Nikola Tesla of your body, because your body is a body electric, right? And he through orgone energy, he learned how to heal everything in the body, cancer, mental disease, you name it, he did it. And the Congress made a law stating that anything that talks about orgone energy and Wilhelm Reich's work is a traitor and will get 60 years in jail. So they went into Wilhelm Reich's house, and of course, all his books are there and his things. They took him away. Scared the crap out of anybody who was practicing that, and I was learning that, right? Mike. Oh, Mike Whiteside, buddy, you're on the road. So I'm out in the woods and I'm hanging off a tree. My neighbor is being kind to let me use his Wi-Fi, but I'm pretty much here. So, Mike, what do you see out there on the road? Come on, you're my eyes out there in the world. What's happening? My observation is gas prices are. I mean, there is no shortage of gas. Gas, it's like ridiculous. Please, and Putin is making more money today with all the restrictions. That he is making more money for the oil. He's making close to $2 billion a day on gas and oil, right? So. No, just hanging at home. So when was the last you were out on the road? What did you see when you were last on the road? My assumption, and I have some friends who work in the high levels of the supply chain, and they say that all this is a forced hand to basically have all transportation electric, and that everyone is going to have electric car, and all the tractor trailers are going to be electric, like in 2 years. And none of the trucks will have drivers; they will all be robotic, and all the cars. You will not own your car. You'll hit a little app on your phone and the car will arrive to take you wherever you want to go. Only if you're a good person, and you get your check and you're a good person, right? And so that's where it is. It'll be very similar to China's, we have a credit scale, they have a social scale, and that's kind of what we're heading for, right? What is Mike saying here? Oh, has slowed my travels. They want to ruin small biz. Well, they already have ruined small biz, like back in 1876. So it's they're now just getting rid of the illusion of small business, right? So here we are. What time is it? 6:01. I have 23% left in my battery, so maybe in 10 minutes I'll have to bail so I can post this, but we'll do a little more.
That's right. That's what I try and get people to understand who are worried about collapse. You should pray they collapse. Now, we're not in the middle of a collapse. They're collapsing us.
Right.
There's a difference between a collapse and a controlled demolition and a bank robbery, right? So
that's what happened on 9/11.
So
The Federal Reserve had trillions of dollars of gold in the vaults
that the
underneath the
vast
World Trade
majority of
Center.
the people in the system
And when those
know
trucks,
what
within
they're
hours,
doing.
they were pulling,
It's the only way I can
stuff
describe
out of
it.
the basement of the World
They
Trade
don't
Center,
see the
and
big
lots
picture.
of those
I've never
dump
gotten
trucks
into
had
a boardroom
gold in
where
them.
I couldn't, within a reasonable period of time, help people understand what they were dealing with and how they might, sort of turn and pivot and change.
Right, which we could have. Up to 9/11, we could have pivoted.
Remember, all the people who are trying, a lot of the people who are trying to deal with this are on a need to know basis.
Mhm.
They don't see the big picture and they're not responsible for the whole.
They just get the
think
check,
of it
and they're
this
good
way.
people.
I once said to one of my partners who had grown up on Montserrat, I said to him, how come I have so many partners who come?
I am listening to Dark Journalism, which is an excellent YouTube channel, and the woman is Catherine Austin Fitz, and she was second in control of HUD during the trickle down Ronald Reagan days, right? And so she was there, and she was second, and so she was at a meeting and said, this is, everything has been decontrolled by Bill Clinton, and people are just walking away with the furniture and the doors and everything you can think of. It's all being sliced up, and we if we keep doing this, it's going to ruin. We will not be able to come back from this, right? And they said, "Shut up, Kathleen." She said, "No, no, no. I have this better idea. If we do this, meaning walk away from the Federal Reserve and print our own money and give real value to what is there." And they fired her. Then they arrested her, and then she had to fight them for 10 years, but she didn't give up. They kept saying, plead guilty and we'll let you go and give you a check, and just skulk away. And she didn't. She fought him for 10 years, went totally bankrupt, but just right. And at the end, they had to give her like $20 million, right? So and then she put that into a Solaris report. That's her website, and she has a whole number of amazing informations on what's going on. And so that's Catherine Austin Fitz. Go look her up, right? And this is dark journalism, and he goes into, you name it, he goes into it. But there's a guy he has on named Joseph P. Farrell, who wrote a ton of books. The guy's unbelievable scholar. Like me, he's not a scholastic, he's a scholar. So he has looked at everything from Samaria to today. And he just puts all the dots in a line and shows what's going on, what secret society is doing what. And that's another reason why Jack Kennedy got whacked, because about 2 weeks before he got whacked, he gave a speech about secret societies, very similar to Eisenhower's speech about the military industrial complex. And, Eisenhower did that just to guard his back so he could go off, retire, and play golf. That's all he wanted to do, him and Mimi. Whereas Jack was dying, and he knew he was dying, and he knew he had limited time, so he went balls to the wall, right? So he knew they were going to whack him, Well, cybercrime is a scam, right? It's a bait and switch, and it's to break the back of a point-to-point economic system. They don't want that. What they do want is an electronic money thing where, like in India, Modi got up one day on Friday and said, "Okay." He went on TV at 8 in the evening and said, "Tomorrow, Saturday, when all the banks are closed, we are switching from cash to electronic money. Everyone has to buy, sell on their little cell phone." Now, if you're a small business guy and you've been keeping your money in a mattress in your house, well, all that money as of now is worthless. If you hadn't put it in the bank, it's worthless. Now you can have 1 to 100 rupees in a sale, but other than that, nah, then that's like $10. You could have a $10 bill. That's the only cash. Up to that. Anything larger, illegal, right? So now India, all of those million and a half people, they are under the gun. They are in the jail of doing everything on this thing. So and this little thing is this is a miniaturization of what was known as the keyhole satellite. 1970s, with gigantic satellite size of a school bus, and it could listen to. It could suck up every radio, telephone signal that it was over, and it could look down and read things. On the pack of could read the thing on the pack of cigarettes saying that this will kill you, right? So the keyhole sound. So it could, suck up, anybody who's walking by on an airstrip or a test site or anything had a clipboard. It could read the clipboard, right? It could listen. That person is, near something that's picking up, someone talking, and then, through, putting it out there, like they were going by aircraft that its radio was still on, and they had a conversation. That satellite could pick it up. So it was surveilling, right? That is the technology. Everything about this, the motherboard, the camera, the screen, everything. This is the keyhole satellite. 30, 70, 80, 90. Oh, so 50 years later, the miniaturization of the thing the size of a school bus in space, this is it. And that's why they gave everyone one of these, right? I mean, when my other one kind of died, they gave me this. They didn't make me buy it, right? I bought this one when the other one died and I needed something to back it up. I bought this at Walmart for $20. It's a smartphone. Does every thing. It's a fancy one. $20. This was free. They want Google. You know, Google should pay you to Google because they learn more about you Googling than you get from the information they give you. And so that's where we're at, gang, right? And, you know, this show I started on May 18th, 4 years ago, right? So we're now 4 years and a couple months into this, right? And 2.5 years ago, I started talking about the big splat, right? And we're in and the big splat isn't like, Wile E. Coyote, boom, it's like a slow motion splat. And we have been in the big splat since the Civil War, really, right? And so that's where we're at. So Captain Austin Fitz, Joseph P. Farrell, dark journalist, and the other thing he likes to talk about is COG, continuation of government. And when the 1947 the National Security Act was passed, one of them they got COG. So we're gonna, oh my God, we're threatened with nuclear war, so we had to have a standby government underground. So DC gets blown away, we'll have somebody there. But none of those guys who run COG were voted on. But the rules say that it can't go into effect until there's a nuclear war and everyone dies. Then they can take over, right? But when Mr. Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney was in the you know Ronald Reagan administration, they changed the rules on COG. Anything can kick COG off. Because once COG gets we have martial law. So let's say racial riots, COG comes in. Let's say gigantic hurricanes across the East Coast washes out, half the coast. COG comes in. That's not what it was meant to be, but that's what it can do today. For any reason, the president, like Donnie Trump, could have, if the Joint Chiefs and a few others would have let him, he could have rolled out COG, right? And you have to realize that every election is a lie, not just Donnie's. And you have to realize that Donnie Trump and Ronald Reagan both were employed by General Electric. Both were on TV, right? Um, Ronnie ran the GE Playhouse for 5 years. Donald Trump he's a game show host. that was called The Apprentice, and he was the apprentice to be president. You're fired. That's all he did, right? The only real piece of legislature that he passed was a $2.8 trillion a year tax break for the uber rich and corporations. That's the only thing he did. I mean, he did stack the Supreme Court, but that was just to make um, those people happy, right? Not the judges, but the entity that that is a biological creature, that Jerry Falwell created, or it was, he was just anybody you see is just a poster child. The folks who are really pulling the strings, they're the hidden hand. You do not see them. How much juice is left here? A few minutes left of this. Let's see if yes, there we go.
Come from islands. And he said, when you're on an island, you realize what goes around comes around. And over many years, even when you're young, you realize you've got to take responsibility for the whole too. Because if you don't, what's going to come around and hit you? And so you really see how what you put out is what comes back.
So that's why I have been doing this.
Now,
being involved.
The United States has always been such
trying
a big
to
country.
inform since
And in the political process in Washington,
1967.
everybody believes the effective tactic is to just be out for themselves. So nobody cares about the
so
whole.
much
Nobody
me.
takes responsibility for it.
As long as I've been doing this, I've been taken care of.
Comes back around.
Now, Mr. Mike knows me a while, and he knows when I died, and that our common friend gave me a job in his business because that guy came up and got me and said, "Oh, you got to come off the mountain. You got, I got to take you. You got to do something. You're going to die." He was right.
Protect my shit.
So they made me, the grandpa Smurf of this business.
But, it's everybody's in there fight. It's like a bunch of dogs fighting for a piece of steak.
Yeah,
is what it feels like when you're in Washington, and everybody's.
Mike, come and visit me. I have a great place. I live out in heaven, right?
Daniel,
right near. I live right between App State, which is Boone, North Carolina, and Johnson City, which in Tennessee.
You can't just print money.
I'm about
and here's the challenge
150 miles from
the people trying to run the system
Roanoke.
In some respects. The more you print the money and spend this explosive amount of money on continuity government and the national security state, the more the productivity goes down.
Yeah, baby.
Right. And so from a productivity standpoint, you're building a negative loop, and it keeps getting worse and worse. And every time it gets worse, you have to solve it by printing more money, which makes it worse, and around you go. And the system drives a lot of the productive people out.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. And
that is a very kind of deadly cycle.
Productivity in the first quarter of this.
And that's why I live in the woods. I've been driven out. I was replaced by an app.
Here was down 7.5%. And that is the most terrifying statistic. The other one I heard that was very terrifying, Alfie Oakes just did an interview with Tucker Carlson. I don't know if you saw it. He's a successful businessman and entrepreneur in the grocery business in Florida. He's got a vertical operation. His family was in farming and roadside stands. And so he's just built a vertical operation from farms all the way into the grocery stores. What he said is we need to be prepared for between now, when he did the interview, which I think was a week or two ago, from now and the end of the year, we need to be prepared for 100% increase in our food prices.
Incredible.
And my food stamps went from $200 to $48.
Scope of what
I'll be able to buy a banana.
So, Catherine, engineered food shortages. This is part of the war plan.
Right. Right. And we're definitely seeing this engineered. There is a war on small farmers. There's an effort to shut them down. And there's an effort. We have a tracker.
Listen to what this lady's saying, audience. Don't stick your head in the sand and say, "Oh, maybe tomorrow I'll do something."
The fires. It's clearly arson of all these different food installations.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a war.
I wanted to ask
a ton of food processing plants, like 75 of them have been burnt to the ground.
Where we can't get these containers because all these ships are hanging out on the coast, we can't get the stuff in, and there's no trucks to pull them in, and all this nonsense. And then the next thing, the food distribution places are getting, suddenly going on fire, which just seems absurd. And there's no good national coverage on that, unfortunately. What is going on there?
So I think, back to central control. If you're not going to use oil to back the dollar, then the next best thing to use is food. And you can certainly use it domestically. And the Anglo-American Alliance is a real food juggernaut globally. If you look at Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United States all together. So I think there's a push to try and use control of food. And we know there's a major effort in the venture and investment world to bring out synthetic food.
Yes.
Right.
So you're trying to replace food with synthetic food. And it's
Soya green. It's people.
And you're also trying to assert central control. So and I think it's very much related to the trying to maintain and evolve the currency system. Because if you have CBDC and digital IDs and
I got a place you can put it.
You got everybody.
Yes. No one can get out at that point. Before we get there, there's an incredible, as you pointed out, movement towards local farmers markets.
Right.
Put food front and center. There's the ability to do that under these circumstances, to take this crisis and to turn it around to make things more local. You say that's true?
Yeah, there is. What you've got to do is you've got to build supply in the food system locally, and you've got to build food liquidity locally. And you also have to build a stable food system, currency and money system locally. So you need to be able to build equity locally, and you need to be able to circulate transactions and investment locally. And to do that, you need stable governance someplace, whether it's at the county level with the sheriff and the city council, or the county.
And my counties, the 5 surrounding counties, they are corrupt as any place out there. I don't see any non-corrupt political entity in this country.
Great governance at the state level, and then at the good
That's
sheriff
a joke.
and good county level governance.
That's a joke.
There's a lot that can be done. And
there's a lot being done by corrupt governance in those places.
At the state level, or you are at the county level, how do you stop the squeeze from the feds?
Right. You pointed out that Maine passed something recently along this line that was really good. And that's kind of a model in a sense.
Right. And Tennessee just took the sales tax off of gold and silver. And that puts us in a position in Tennessee to use gold and silver as a currency. If you go to Solari.com, we have a silver and gold payment calculator. And it'll toggle back and forth between gold and silver and 150 different currencies. So if you want to start
Well, guys, I got to go. My batteries are about to collapse. So just to protect my devices, I'm going to say see you later. I'll try and talk to you tomorrow. Stay well, be good. So I think that's enough for you to chew on. Mike, I'll try and call you later. Okay. And ciao, baby. And so, gotta go. So, okay. So, how long have we been on? 54 minutes. 2 people watching. 3 people liked. Well, again, I need some cash. Send it to me into PayPal, thedudeawake42 at Gmail. Okay. Like I said, I have $37 in my bank account. Okay. And I can live on that. That's not a problem. But it would, facilitate. I'm going to get, some operations, and it'd be nice to have a little something in my pocket when they cut me up like baloney. So anyway, I'll talk to you later.